this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, for the stalwarts that came back directly from lunch and ready for a little more content, here to start us off is PetroTal. PetroTal is a publicly traded Canadian oil company focused on E&P operations in onshore, with onshore assets in Peru, and have had a tremendous success with the Bretaña field. They're now the largest oil producer in the country of Peru. So here to tell that story and give us an update is Manolo Zúñiga, their CEO and president as well. Yep.
Thank you, Eric, and thanks to EnerCom to having us here again. I always enjoy coming to Denver for this conference. The presentation is not showing, is it?
Try advancing it. See.
Yeah.
It's the wrong side, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Wait.
Our buddy Dan go.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, sorry about that. So I always like to start with this slide that shows our camp on the Bretaña oil field that we're located in the middle of the Amazon jungle. And something that I always like to highlight is that we are in the buffer zone of the Pacaya-Samiria, and we drill our wells horizontally. So we have put together a slide, a video that introduces where we are located and how we present this to the local communities.
The National Reserve is one of the most biodiverse areas in the Peruvian Amazon. Multi-diverse ecosystem that hosts thousands of species of flora and fauna. We carry out an extremely important production activity in the buffer zone of the Pacaya-Samiria National Reserve. We are PetroTal, a company led and operated by Peruvians. We operate Block 95 in the district of Huinaúa in the Loreto region. We use state-of-the-art technology to optimize resources without disrupting the ecosystem. We are PetroTal, a modern and efficient institution committed to development and sound environmental and social practices. We began operations at Block 95's Bretaña Norte oil field in 2018. We currently produce 20,000 barrels a day, making us the country's leading crude oil producer. Production is 19.2 degrees API heavy crude from the Vivian reservoir. We are the only company in Peru that drills horizontal and long-range wells. These wells can recover hydrocarbons from the Vivian oil sands at a true vertical depth of over 2,700 meters in the Bretaña Norte oil field without causing any surface or underground damage in the Pacaya-Samiria National Reserve. The horizontal wells are drilled from the same platform or cluster, avoiding wider deforestation. We use modern technology that allows us to monitor the entire process. In the first stage, the company drills about 1,500 meters in a vertical and or medium angle direction. Then, a special lining is placed inside as drilling goes on. In the second stage, the well reaches a length of 3,000 meters before drilling a short section of less than 1,000 meters. Synthetic-based drilling mud, or SBM, is used to lubricate and reinforce well structures. Finally, the company drills at a 90-degree angle in the Vivian reservoir. Geonavigation tools are used throughout the process. A modern system of cutting-edge drills and directional drilling tools that allows the company to analyze local conditions in real time. The well is completed by placing a set of meshes and AICD valves, which consist of a system of autonomous valves that restrict water seepage into the reservoir. Before starting well production, a permanent electric submersible pump is placed at a depth of 2,500 meters. At PetroTal, we follow strict environmental standards. Rigorous monitoring is carried out in the area of influence on a regular basis. At PetroTal, we're aware of the major responsibility we have as a private company to the region and the country. Our efforts are focused on the sustainable development of the oil industry and the economic and social growth of our area of influence. At PetroTal, we innovate the industry.
So that's the way we explain to the local authorities and the local people what we are doing. As I was mentioned, we're the only company drilling horizontal wells. Here in the US, it's very common, but not in Peru, so you have to explain it very carefully that everything is done safely. And the difference between our wells and some of the wells here in the US is that they start at 10,000 barrels of oil per day. So even though they cost about $12 to $15 million, sometimes they pay out in less than a month. So the economics of this project are truly fantastic. After all, the Vivian formation, it has 2, 3, 4 darcies of permeability. It's extremely permeable, so we don't have to frack at all. We have Mother Nature doing that for us. So we're located, as you can see in the map, the middle of the Amazon jungle of Peru, next to the Pacaya Samira Reserve. We have actually 2 blocks. To the south, you see block 107, where we hope to be able to drill in the next couple of years or so. But in block 95, we have still a lot of upside besides the Bretaña field. We see possibilities of having something similar to Bretaña just south inside that same block. So nowadays, we have a market cap north of $100 million, something that I used to tell our investors when about a year and a half ago, our EV ratio was just 1. I said, well, let's wait until we do some of the things that we have committed to do. We need to pay our debt, which now we have paid, and we have to restart our dividend payments. We did one in June, and we just offered one for September 15, increasing it by 80%. I'll tell you more about our plan. So it's all about commitments, doing things right for the environment, for the local people, and of course, all of our shareholders. So the proposition for us is very straightforward. We have one single field. It's a large field. It has about 100 million barrels of 2P reserves. It's supported by a strong aquifer. So we have Mother Nature helping us. It's all about managing fluids. You're going to produce oil with water. You have to dispose of the water back into the reservoir, and we've been doing that. And the more we can do that, the more we're going to be able to extract oil from the contract that we have that expires at the end of 41. This is a quick review of the history of the company. We have been growing steady. We could have done it much faster. After all, in 2019, we ended the year with 11,000 barrels of oil, but then the pandemic came in, forcing us to raise additional capital, the high-yield bonds, which we have now paid. And this year we put forward a somewhat conservative guidance, but seeing where the river levels are as we depend on the Amazon River to move oil via barges, looks like we're going to hit it just right at 14,000 and a half. But even with that, we can provide a lot of money back to investors. So that for us is key. So when we set up the company about 5.5 years ago, I made a few promises to investors. I told them, based on our experience, these oil fields usually double or triple in size. And you can see that Netherland Sewell gave us 2P reserves of 37.5 million. And by the end of 2022, we were almost at 97, keeping in mind we had already produced 11. So the ultimate recovery as of year-end was 108, basically triple the size of the field. And that's what we're heading, trying to do as best as we can. You can see also on the production forecast done by Netherland Sewell, we have to be very careful. Right now, if I open all of my wells, I could be at 25,000 barrels of oil per day. But because we depend on the rivers to move oil via barge, we're constraining production. And that it's going to force us this quarter, to be at about 13,000. But last quarter, we show record production of 20,000 barrels per day, 19,000 of oil sales, proving that under the proper conditions, we can deliver a lot of oil. And given that type of reserves, you can see production growing to until 27, 28. There's a lot of room to be able to do things and make as much money as possible. The other promise that I made investors was that this was going to be a cash flowing machine. So I'm very happy that last quarter we paid 1.5 cents per share. And now this quarter we actually jumped that to 2.5 cents per share. we have announced that our dividend plan is to be able to give at least 1.5 cents, but any cash above 60 million liquidity, we're going to give it back to investors. And liquidity, always thinking of what we need to do in the future. That's why in September 15, from the 1.5, we have jumped to 2.5 cents. So always doing what we have promised that we will do. Now, something that you see in this graph is that we are now dependent on the Manaus route. The trading company from Houston buys oil FOB Bretaña and take it by barge all the way to Manaus, where the tankers come in to take it mostly to the U.S. We also sell to the local Iquitos refinery, small, but they're very steady, 40, 60, 80,000 barrels per month on a consistent basis, and we would like to sell more to Iquitos. It has good netbacks. We used to go to the pipeline a lot. It's been quite a while that the pipeline has unfortunately been shut down, about a year and a half. So we've been looking at other markets. One of them, for example, is in Lima, the Conchán refinery. I was last week in Petroperú talking to the chairman and general manager, and they were suggesting that we bring possibly 4,000 or 5,000 to Conchán refinery. We could go to Yurimaguas and then by truck to Bayover. We're even looking at doing an initial pilot to go via Ecuador to the OCP of Ecuador and taking oil. We need to diversify and not be so much dependent on the Amazon River per se, but some of the other rivers, and that way, when the dry season comes, we don't have to constrain production. So you have my commitment that we're going to be working to be able to maintain a steady production and grow it as Netherland Sewell forecasted last year. And this is extremely important because, as you can see here, we have in our base case of the 14,500 and at $85 oil, we will have after-tax free cash flow of $85 million. Imagine if you could maintain 16,500 or 18,500, how quickly the free cash flow adds up. And under the plan that we're going to be giving back money to investors, that adds up quite fast. And that's what we're intending to do. We were privileged when we actually bought the assets of Bretaña and the Block 95, that we had $330 million of NOLs. They are now running out. So starting later this year, we're going to start accruing taxes that are going to be paid. So after almost 5.5 years, finally the company is going to start paying income taxes. That's always good, because in the government in Peru, they like when you pay taxes besides paying the royalties. And they always ask you, how much are you going to pay? And we're going to be paying a lot of taxes in the future. But the project sustains all of that. And as you can see here, this is based on a consistent $130 million capex per year, plus the 32% income tax, plus the royalties and the employee benefits, and of course the social trust fund that we have set up that is allowing us, being the only company in the Amazon jungle, producing almost on a consistent basis. So I'm very proud of what we have been able to accomplish. So the bottom line, as you can see here, is that this year we have paid our bonds. We were giving money back to investors. We're going to retain, as I mentioned, the idea is to retain about 60 million of liquidity consistently. And with that, we can execute on a long-term basis. And as you can see in the bottom, you can see that we are increasing the dividend only for this quarter. Next quarter, we will evaluate, but should be at least 1.5 cents, maybe more. And of course, let's not forget that we also have a buyback of $1 million of shares per month. So all combined, we are giving back on an annualized basis about $70 million back to investors every single year. So short term is very straightforward. We want to continue developing Bretaña, of course, giving money back to investors. And I always tell the investors that my wife likes dividends as well. So, we're all fully aligned with that. So you got my commitment that we will continue doing that. But more importantly for us, you see this forecast on the 2P and 3P case. And you look at the end of the contract, and in 2041, we still have 12,000 barrels of oil per day. That's a lot of oil. So the certified 2P reserves are only accounting to that date, not accounting for all that extra oil that we have. So actually the field could produce more than the 100 million of 2P reserves easily. So our job as engineers is to be able to squeeze as much of that as possible. And as I've always mentioned to investors, we are basically building a factory to process fluids. In our original plan, we were going to have 20 oil wells, each one producing 10,000 barrels of fluid. So we were going to be managing 200,000 barrels of fluid, that at a 5% oil cut, you're producing 10,000 barrels of oil. So now we're thinking that under the 2P case, to round up numbers, we have 30 oil wells now. And instead of 10,000, what about if we do 15,000 per well? So 450,000. That even at a 3% oil cut, you're producing as much as our guidance for this year. And that will allow us then to deplete the reservoir faster and therefore add more value to the company. So that's what PetroTal is all about. Always being as efficient and effective as possible and to add as much value as possible as we've been doing since the beginning of the company. So then on the long-term basis, we believe that we have possible Bretañas in Block 95. And of course, we want to do this very carefully, always taking care of the environment. EnerCom always invites me in Dallas to the ESG conference, where I give more details of what we do. But of course, giving money back to investors, always keeping track of the future of the company. And here you see on this slide, we have now a plan to get the permit to do the seismic on Block 95. In the map below, you see the different structures that we have mapped. These are leads right now. They require seismic to make sure that we have the traps. But because Bretaña was filled to the spill point, we believe that that oil that's been migrating from Colombia to Ecuador to the northern fields north of us in Peru, should continue migrating south. And if we have traps, all of those structures should be full of oil. And therefore, we could replicate Bretaña again and again and again, as you can see there. The timing for all of this is for us to be drilling and producing by 2027. It's a lot of work, but the permitting process in Peru always takes you a little bit extra time. But I think that we will be very successful once we do the seismic, and I'm looking forward to coming here and start giving you some idea of what we're looking at. So final slide is what happens if we do find more oil as we expect. And you see some of those structures. There's one, I like the best, Lead E in the south, with 120 million barrels. That's a big one. You have the other one with 48 million. That's actually larger than the initial Bretaña. Keep in mind, these fields usually end up being 2 and 3 times as large. It's all about managing fluids, doing this, taking care of the environment and the local people, and of course our shareholders to give plenty of money back. You can see the economics. So this is PetroTal, a company committed to the environment, to our shareholders, and to all of the stakeholders, and to give you money back. Thank you so much.